Hi everyone, happy New Year's Day. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here on WCNC Plus, and you are watching Live Weather Impact. I know it is New Year's Day, but we are still here bringing you the latest on the forecast. And the first thing I do want to start with is talking about the drought monitor. Now, personally, I have not talked to you guys about this in a few weeks, but of course, I'm sure Becca and Brad have been keeping you updated on this. But we did get a new drought monitor today, just came out this morning at 8:30, and we have started to see more significant drought conditions develop across the Charlotte area. And now you can notice the brown that's shaded all the way from the western Carolinas all the way into us here in Charlotte, includes the Raleigh-Durham area. One little sliver there from Florence, South Carolina over toward Myrtle Beach and Wilmington is probably the only spot that's lucky right now, as they're not dealing with any drought conditions at all. Now, I do want to remind people that drought monitor is not just about how dry or the lack of rainfall we've had lately. It's also compared to where we should be this time of year. So they look at soil moisture, soil temperatures, things like that. So we will likely see a smaller increase right over the next few months because we're normally drier than average. But overall, this is not necessarily a trend that we really want to see going in again to the driest time of the year. Let's talk about what's now, new, and next. Beautiful day. Temperatures, of course, are going to be on the chillier side again tonight. The biggest thing that's changing here in the near term is our increasing rain chances across the Charlotte area. We'll be watching a large storm system moving in Friday night and into Saturday morning that will create some pockets of heavy rain on the roadway Saturday, which could impact, I wouldn't say your morning commute, I guess, because people normally aren't up as early, right, on Saturday mornings, but it is going to impact you if you're going to be out and about early. Maybe you're worried about an outdoor plan you had Saturday day, even afternoon. I would say at this point, if you can reschedule, I'd go ahead and do that, because even after the heaviest rain is over, it is still going to be one of those wedge setups with cloudy sky conditions, chilly temperatures, and of course, we know what happens before and after a wedge. Think about last Sunday at the Panther Stadium. Areas of drizzle. You love to see it in terms of needing rain, but you hate to see it if you have outdoor plans. Of course, the wedge also means that we'll be feeling much colder throughout the day on Saturday. Not today, though. Temperatures getting to 60 degrees here in Charlotte. It's currently 53, which is actually our average high for this time of year. So truthfully, very, very comfortable outside. This evening, again, still chilly, right? We're still in the mid-30s, which is above average for this time of year, but still on the colder side. Temperatures up in the mountains, pretty comfortable overall, 32 degrees. They've been in the 20s a lot this past week, so still freezing, but hey, at least a little bit of a change. As we look ahead to this is your high temperature forecast the next 7 days. What I want you to look at is what day is different than all the others. Of course, we can see the 53, the 54, that's closer to average, but 48, not really much else to say other than that. That's the day that we'll be watching the wedge. As we really have two pieces of energy that are going to be moving toward the Carolinas. First things first, I circled this here so you can kind of see it. It's a little bit easier for me to draw on for you guys, of course, during live weather impact compared to the normal weathercast. But there's this piece of energy here coming in from the west, but there's also a cold front that's kind of situated right here. And the two almost take a merge as they get closer to us here as we head toward Friday and Saturday. And as they do so, this helps, of course, bring in the moisture and technically the warm, moist air that we need for the wedge to set up. Cold air comes in from the north and east, as we know. The warm air essentially goes over it in a process called overrunning, and as it does, it condenses, brings more precipitation. And as we know, because of the east side of the mountains, then it gets trapped and there we are, cold and chilly, sometimes for one day, sometimes for days. I think in this case, it is thankfully going to be only on Saturday, but we'll let you know, of course, if anything changes. So what we're going to be watching Friday, of course, which is tomorrow. I know this week has been weird, but yes, today is Thursday, January 1st, so tomorrow's Friday, January 2nd, is we will see warm temperatures and sunshine before the clouds start to move in. Now, this is helpful for us because this means we're already in the 60s before the clouds move in, meaning it keeps our temperatures very mild overnight. So we're going to be pretty mild overnight. And if the normal low is 32, we know mild means closer to the mid 40s for the most part. By 10, 11 o'clock Friday, again, we're really mild temperature wise in the 50s and 40s. Rain starts to move in just after midnight. I do think the heaviest rain looks to be between about 5 to 8 a.m. And then you'll notice things do start to fizzle out slowly throughout the day. So again, the heaviest rain is really, really early in the morning. But with those areas of light rain, and if you've ever been in a wedge, which you have been if you live in the Carolinas, it's just uncomfortable, especially if you're sitting outside and you all are going to be outside for long periods of time. Normally when it's cold and it's sunny, the reason why it feels better outside, of course, is because you're getting that solar radiation, the sun helping, to kind of warm you up throughout the day. However, it's the opposite effect when it's cloudy. There's no incoming solar radiation and the cold just kind of develops, it seems like, on top of itself. Now, in terms of how much rain we could get, it's not going to be a ton. If you've been looking for a good dose of rain for your gardens, this is not the one, but it is going to be widespread for everyone. I'm very confident at this point that everyone will see at least some rain. Again, even if it's drizzle, even if it's really, really light. Maximum total is likely closer to 1/2 of an inch, and that's if you're lucky. Everybody is closer to probably 1/4 to 0.1. If you're wondering where we ended in terms of how dry we were compared to normal for this time of year, it was pretty dry, about 1.5 inches. But we'll talk more about that, of course, coming up throughout the show. Big game tomorrow, Bank of America Stadium. My graduate school, Mississippi State Bulldogs, taking on Wake Forest. Again, happy if anyone wins because it's a local team versus my alma mater. Because of those clouds, of course, again, temperature is very, very comfortable. 50s for the most part. Very, very small chance of some patchy drizzle, but that'll be closer to midnight once things are hopefully wrapping up. But if you're hanging out in Uptown, it's probably going to get better rain chances throughout the evening. Not probably, it will. But I just showed you that, of course, in that hour-by-hour look at Saturday. So as you look at the 7-day forecast, again, you'll notice all these things we talked about. Because of the areas of heavy rain and it being a weekend and the first weekend of 2026, I did put on that little red bar there you see for the first half of Saturday to indicate that we just want people to be weather aware. I mean, it's going to be a mess for the first half of the day, and who doesn't want to be prepared if it's going to be wedge set up? That's just gross outside. Sunday clears out pretty quickly. Sunday, Monday, some of the chillier but still nice days outside, and then we have a really big warm up by mid next week as a really strong dome of high pressure moves in across the Carolinas, bringing us close to 70 degrees. And if you've been with us earlier this week, this upcoming week is the week that, if you remember, Tim and I were talking about people posting crazy model data on social media, like 10, 14 days, sometimes more than that out, and then it doesn't happen. And, we talked about all like the crazy shares and things like that. And Tim mentioned there was a week in which it was now going to be closer to 70 that previously people were posting about 6 to 7 inches of rain or 6 to 7 inches of snow. This is the week. So again, when you look at this in perspective, this is why crazy numbers and crazy models should not be shared on social media. But as we always know, we'll get into more semantics weather-wise coming up. We'll tend to take a 2-minute break, and then we'll be back with Tim here very shortly. We're back. Welcome back to Live Weather Impact. It's Tim Buckley, first show of 2026.
First show, got to make it a good show, a big show for sure. Happy New Year, new beginnings, new weather impact. Still pretty
new beginnings, new weather
outside.
Impact. Yeah, you guys thankfully aren't getting as much rain as it looks like we're going to get on Saturday morning. So,
yeah, not a great new beginning on Saturday. It doesn't look like it's going to be one of those days. I was saying to people, if you got a nice new book in your stocking or someone gave you that for Christmas, I think Saturday is a good day to get a start on reading it, because it's going to be a page turner kind of a day with clouds and drizzle and all those things.
That's a great idea.
But we're looking here at some January numbers. Isn't that cool? When we start a new month, sometimes it's nice to take a look at what it tends to be or what it has been in the past. And well, all these numbers are for Greensboro, but I assume Charlotte's pretty similar. It's usually our coldest month of the year. Typically the coldest. Temperatures don't move that much usually. The averages are staying pretty similar anyway. In Greensboro, Brittany, we tend to get some snow. About 2/3 of January's on record have had some snow, measurable. We average 3 inches. And we gain some daylight. So about 40 minutes of daylight are gained from start to finish. The hottest we've ever been was 79. The coldest was 8 below. That's our all-time coldest temperature, which was in the 80s. The mid-80s had one of the worst Arctic outbreaks in Carolina history. And our snowiest month, could you imagine? 23 inches of snow in a single month. We'd be doing weather impact all day long, all month.
What I wouldn't give. I do have a January by the numbers as well for Charlotte, and a lot of our numbers are pretty similar. So our coldest is 5 below, Tim. Same thing, 1985 as you guys. We've been 79 twice in 2002 and 1944. Brad has on here wettest and driest. I updated these numbers, but of course he updated them for December. So I thought this is kind of crazy. 0.45 inches of rain for an entire month. That was the driest ever, also in the 80s. Pretty crazy.
Very dry. Yeah.
What's interesting is that y'all's January, look at your most snow. Yours was 22 inches? Ours is only 13.5, which is still a lot, but that was in the late 1800s. That was 1893. So again, while I wouldn't love to have 13 and a half, that's not nearly as much as you guys. And I also laughed at the fact that you put temps steady and I put steady temperatures. We just swapped our words when we put our graphics together. But we also gain about 40 minutes of daylight as well, which I think a lot of people are excited about. So January. We're just hoping it brings all things positive.
Yeah, for me, I can deal with cold weather. I can deal with snow or rain or all these kind of things. I do really mentally appreciate expanding daylight. I think for me, those really shorter days are something I don't enjoy. So I always am kind of tracking it anxiously. And once we get around that corner right after the holidays, I start to kind of look forward to the next milestone. So like, when do we get to 5:30 for the sunset? I always kind of mentally note that around Valentine's Day is that first 6 o'clock sunset for us. And you really notice it just more and more going through the winter.
Yeah, and in theory, if we fall back in the beginning of November and we spring forward in the beginning of March, that means we're like halfway there, right? 2 months in, 2 months to go.
Oh, yeah. We are around the corner in more ways than one. But hey, we talked all about this cold weather, and it's really just all academic at this point, because the first part of January is going to be, except for Saturday, it's going to be warmer than average, which is not the way it looked if you'd asked us probably a week or two ago, which is why the shorter range forecasts are better than the longer range ones.
I love that you just said that, because that was the hill I was dying on right before we went to break. Remember when Tim and I talked about those crazy social media posts? This is why you don't listen to them.
Yeah. And it's the data is the data. We have computer models, and they help us as a guide, but they're far from gospel, is what we tend to say. And in this case, there's been a big flip. So this is the temperature outlook for later next week and into next weekend. And it's plain to see the eastern 2/3 of the country are more likely than not to be above normal. Now, our average highs, like Brittany was showing you and I was showing you, generally in the upper 40s to low 50s around the Carolinas. So this isn't going to say you're going to be 70 degrees, but it could be kind of close to it in Charlotte a couple of those days. So definitely warmer weather is on the table, and it removes the snow chance from the table as well. There just isn't one for the first 10 days of the month.
Yeah, sad to say, but that doesn't mean that we don't have plenty of cold air still to come, as we got all the rest of January and, of course, February, too. And, Tim, we were talking earlier about the fact that a big, I think, resolution, right, because it is New Year's Day for a lot of folks, is trying to get, into fitness, right? It's very, very common. And there are things that you should keep in mind, though, if you are going to be running or jogging or even just walking outside. Cold weather is much, much different than if you try to do that during the summer. And Chris Mulcahy is going to break down some of that for us.
During the new year, you may be inspired to put down the remote, get off the couch, and get moving more. How am I already out of breath? Am I out of shape or is it the cold? Well, let's find out and raise that weather IQ. Cold. Being cold is subjective, where people tolerate the cold differently. When you're running, you generate your own heat, which makes the cold more tolerable compared to standing still. 45 degrees, for example, is a cold day for most of us here in the Carolinas. But some studies have stated that 45 degrees is actually an ideal marathon temperature. Temperatures in the 40s minimize our body's efforts to maintain its core temperature. This leaves us more energy to maintain faster paces. But there are some disadvantages. Running in the cold can also trigger what's called bronchospasms, which are asthma-like coughing and wheezing that makes breathing more difficult. When running in the cold, you create your own wind chill, which makes your extremities feel colder. But there are some great advantages. When we have our first real frigid day of the season, our bodies spark its fight or flight reflex. Blood moves inward from your skin to preserve its core. Running and exercises also causes levels of a chemical that increases brain cell growth. That releases the feel-good hormone dopamine. This is helpful for those suffering from seasonal affective disorder during the colder months. Also, by running in the sunshine, it increases our production of vitamin D, which regulates serotonin. This makes us happy if it's normal. When it's low, can lead to depression. When running in the cold, dress in layers. Cover up your extremities. Make sure to limber up because your muscles can really tighten up in those colder temperatures. And of course, stay hydrated no matter the temperature. Stay warm and enjoy the run. I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy with WCNC Charlotte.
What a guy.
He's still going. He's still running.
Yeah. I wish I had been here the day he was recording that in the parking lot. But Chris does bring up a really good point. Hydration. As we know, Tim, it's like people forget that just because it's cold outside doesn't mean that you don't need to stay hydrated. And it's much easier actually to get dehydrated during the winter months because people are not actively thinking about it when it's 50 degrees outside like they are when it's 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, you don't think about that at all. But hey, if you're working your body hard, it doesn't matter what the temperature is. You still got to, get after it one way or another. It's interesting to me. I don't know if you're much of a runner or not, Brittany, but I often hear people that say they don't mind running in like that 90-degree summer heat. That's crazy to me. I think it'd be much more comfortable, like Chris was saying here, when it's in the 40s and 50s outside. But those 80s and 90s with the humidity that we get, I don't know. That never really made sense to me.
So Brad Panovich is an avid. He likes it when it's warm outside. I completely agree with you. I'm not a runner. I have 2 herniated discs in my back. Different story for a different day. So I power walk instead of running. But it's true. A lot of people in the Carolinas think that's the case. But if you remember, Tim, when we talked about the marathon a few months ago, it was the same thing. Those studies had just come out about how 40s was like the norm, like the optimal temperature. And then you tell somebody that, and they're like, absolutely not. But it's probably because you're getting sweaty as you run. That's my guess.
Yeah. Everyone's a little bit different, but like Chris was saying, your muscles can get a little tighter when it's colder outside. I know, baseball players talk about this a lot of the times because baseball is one of those sports. It spans the seasons. So it starts in like late March, early April. And in those cold weather cities up north, you have to deal with the cold for a couple months. Then you have the heat of the summer. And then in the playoffs, you're back in October again. So you get the chill. And a lot of the pitchers who work, a lot of the most, especially with their joints and their shoulders, they tend to really love the hot weather because it says that it keeps them loose. So I don't know. That's not my science. That's just what the baseball players say. But I always found that interesting that they love when it's the big heat waves that we're complaining about and sweating through.
I mean, you saw Chris. You just got to do some limbering up in the parking lot of the place where you work. That's all it takes.
That's all you need.
Well, since it is, of course, still winter, and it's the second month of winter now. We're officially in January. I know that we talk a lot going into the winter months, about like predictions and things like that as to what could happen. But, there's that Carolina tradition of the woolly worms, of whether or not they can accurately predict the weather. And so Becca Birdsall did a weather IQ on this. So let's see what she was able to find.
Love it.
For centuries, people have been watching the weather, passing down their observations through sayings and rhymes. I'm of course talking about weather folklore. Let's raise your weather IQ on whether some of this lore is fact or fiction. When leaves turn their back, 'tis a sign it's going to rain. Fiction. While all folklore is based on some truth, leaves turning upside down can also happen on a clear, windy day with no
When it comes to predicting winter in the North Carolina mountains, some folks don't turn to a meteorologist. They turn to a worm. The woolly worm has been a folklore forecaster for generations in the high country. Every fall in Banner Elk, the fuzzy caterpillars crawl their way into the spotlight at the Woolly Worm Festival.
High country magic at its best. The festival just represents, I think, the best of what our community can offer.
Festival chairwoman Victoria Bowman says they will be celebrating close to 50 years of the iconic event that draws in close to 20,000 people with races, food, music, and of course the big winter prediction. According to legend, the 13 bands represent the 13 weeks of winter. Each body segment color of the winning worm corresponds to that week's weather. Here's what each color means. Black, snow and below average temperatures. Brown, average temperatures, and fleck, light snow or frost with below average temperatures. Folklore claims the woolly worm's predictions are 80 to 85% accurate, a tradition embraced across the Appalachian region.
The lore is all about the different patterns of the worm. So the different striping and the ratio of striping from the brown to the black, they all mean, it's kind of like a mood ring vibe, right? Like you get a little key and it tells you what it is.
Now here's the reality. Woolly worms can't really predict winter. The National Weather Service says their coloring has to do more with their age, species, and how good the growing season was, and not the severity of winter ahead. Woolly worms are survival experts. Their fuzzy coat doesn't forecast the weather, it helps them survive brutal cold. From the WCNC Weather Impact Team, I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall.
We've done so many folklore packages on weather, so sorry about that first one, but we did it. We found out about the woolly worm, and they're just so cute, Tim.
I think the whole key with this, and a lot of times people will ask us, hey, I saw this one. What's the deal? Is that the truth? And a lot of this is folklore, and folklore just means fun. I think there's a lot of fun with it. If it gets you more interested in the weather, if it gets you talking more about the weather, hey, I'm not going to poo-poo it here. Obviously, we have a lot of cool tools nowadays that can help us forecast it, but the woolly worms, probably the most fun weather folklore that I can think of. I had talked to Brad about this once before. We grew up, I guess, in the similar region of the country. We called them woolly bears growing up. Oddly enough, in Ohio he said that. In New York I said that. They're really neither bears nor worms. I don't think they're either. I think they're a little caterpillar. But
yeah,
hey,
wait, that's a good point.
Who cares? They're fun.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, they're fuzzy caterpillars.
Nice. Yeah, it's
they're
a little
larvae.
Fuzzy. And what's funny about them is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Google says they're larvae of the Isabella tiger moth. Dun, dun, dun.
So they go
They're
through
tigers.
a metamorphosis,
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Exactly. It looks like it. So they must eventually
Nice.
become moths.
We
Oh, it says
only ever
woolly
talk
worms,
about them
also
or see
called
them
woolly
in the
bears. So
caterpillar.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
There we go. I'm glad. What was fun though as a kid is if you would see them and you kind of, you pick them up to, I don't know, pet them. You know, when you're a kid, you just touch everything. They kind of curl up in a little ball just instantly. They just curl right up. They get a little scared. It's probably not nice to touch them, but they would always curl right up into a tiny little ball. And then when you set them back on the grass, it took them like 5 minutes to unravel and go back to wherever they were going. So.
They were probably waiting to make sure you weren't coming back.
Even as a 5-year-old kid, you're way bigger than a woolly worm.
Or a woolly bear.
Yeah. So I didn't check to see what they were predicting this year. I didn't get to make it up to Banner Elk for the festival. But if they had predicted a average or slightly cooler than average December, they would be right on target because that's what it's been so far in the Carolinas.
Well, I don't think they were right because I just looked it up and it said that there was a cold and snowy start to December. It was cold, but
well.
it wasn't snowy. A brief mild spell, but then a frosty below average finish into late December, which they classify as the last 2 weeks. So I guess if you were talking about like the last day or two, they'd be right. But I don't think they said anything in there about 3 record highs around Christmas.
In true folklore fashion, though, we can prove this any way we want to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about for Banner Elk, I think it sure was a cold and snowy start to winter.
Very true.
Virginia, yes. Charlotte, cold but not snowy. Greensboro, we had 0.2 of an inch of snow, so I don't know. You can fill in your own blanks. One thing I did find interesting, though, is have you ever gotten a picture or seen one where the caterpillar is almost entirely black, and a lot of times people will get that and say, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be the year. This is like the big winter on the way." Well, turns out if you see one that's totally black, it's a totally different species entirely. So it's not a woolly worm. which kind of cracks me up a little bit. But it's all fun. It's something that you can have fun with in the fall.
Yeah, I think that we always talk about the fact that a lot of these folklore, like Red Sky in the Morning, and all that, it comes from like a little bit of science, like the nugget of science is there, and it's like trends that people have noticed over time, but causation not always equal to correlation when it comes to science. So.
Right.
Okay. Well.
And we're all for it. We have another folklore coming up in a couple of weeks. It's called Groundhog Day. So we'll probably talk more about that in about a month.
And it will feel like we're doing it every single year on February 2nd. Repeat. Okay, Tim,
right.
I hope you have a great rest of your day. We have one more show this week tomorrow, and then it'll be the first weekend of the new year. So, folks, make sure you are sticking around
Happy New
because we'll
Year.
have more weather stories and all that jazz on Live Weather Impact this time tomorrow. Tim, have a great night.